so next slide. We're going to start working on the back. All right. So we start with point M. That's what we're at. Point M is half of your back width. Okay. Okay. Measured out from point A.
Okay.
So what's your back width?
17.88.
All right. Half of that. You basically round up to the nearest half inch would be 18. Yeah, and just so that would make it 9. So mark that point. That's point M. And if you square down from line AD to line EC, yeah, you just use this ruler, square down, you'll find point N is directly below point M. And you see how it goes right here? Go straight down. All right, so point O, right here, all right, that's your next point. The distance between A and O is equal to the distance between J and I. Okay? So whatever this distance is here, which is of course equal to L to K and I to K, those are all the same. So you want J to I, and then you measure over from A to find point O. So what's this measurement here?
3.6.
3.5. You measure over that. Now, point P is just above point O. Okay, it's a finger and a half. Okay, here's how you measure a finger and a half. First of all, you want to draw your guideline. Okay, so just draw a line straight up, just so you have it. And you can just you place half a finger. You see how the line's coming down the middle of my finger, and then you can just mark point P. See how that works?
Cool.
All right. Now, this line here from P to A, that's the curve at the back of your neck. It essentially goes from this point right here on your neck to the center. Okay? So you need a slight curve to it, and it's going to be, deeper into the corner. You don't want to just go curve all the way around. Basically just want to curve it, right about there. You see how I did that? So you just want a nice, easy curve there. You don't want as deep as this one, because it's not as sharp of a curve back there.
Right.
But you need that curve. Okay? All right. So that should be this slide. Yeah. Next slide. Okay, we're getting more lines in here, and I know it looks confusing, but trust me, it's not as bad as you think it is, okay? Start with point Q. Point Q is just halfway between H and N. Okay, so just find the halfway point. And it doesn't have to be exact, okay? You just want a general marker. So you got almost 7 inches there. If you go 3.5 and you go a little bit less, that'll be, your halfway point. That's point Q. R is directly below Q on the bottom line, on the waistline there. So this is your chest line. That would be your waistline. So if you square down again from that, point Q there, just, get your ruler lined up there and just connect the dots. Okay? And so this line right here is the equivalent to this line right here. It goes, you go straight down from your armhole to your natural waist.
Yeah, okay.
So if you think about it, that's where it would be. Okay? So I mean, and it's the armhole of a doublet. So that's what that line is right there. Okay? All right. Now, line S to T and line U to V are strictly guidelines to give us the angle of the shoulder seams. Shoulders do not come out straight. Now they're angled down because your neck slopes, your shoulders slope down from your neck. And you want to produce that angle. Okay? So what you want to do is you want a distance that's roughly 3 fingers down from point G. You just measure that off. Okay? So whatever your 3 fingers is, it's about 2 inches is what you're looking for. 2 to 2. And if you put your 3 fingers here, you put 3 fingers down, you're going to get about 2 inches on your ruler. If you have slightly fatter fingers, maybe a little bit less. Okay? And now again, all you have to do is square over from that. Okay? To find T. U to V is, again, it's just another little guideline. So what you want to do is just roughly find the halfway point between these two, make a mark, and then just draw a short guideline over about 2 inches long is what you're looking for. Okay? And yeah, that's good enough right there. All right? Obviously, when you do patterns on your own, you don't necessarily need to mark all the letters. Okay. I know this gets, again, it looks more complicated than it is. Okay, we're going to start with point W, okay, because that's where we're at, point W. That's your shoulder length, okay? And, so what's your shoulder length? All right, so what we do is we take your shoulder length, okay, which is 5.5 inches, okay? What you want to do is you want to put that at point I with your ruler, okay? And then point W is where it intersects line ST. You see how that works? Okay, so I usually like to use the 1 inch mark to see where it is, and so since you're just 5.5, we actually put the 6.5 inch mark at point I. We see where 1 inch, the 1 inch line, you see, and you just connect the dots right there, and that gives you your shoulder length. Okay, your line I to W. Okay. Now, the next line is a little more complicated. Okay. Think about bodies and how they're shaped. You need more material in the back of your shoulder than you need in the front of your shoulder, because your back's usually a little bit rounded. Plus, we always do this, which rounds our back. We almost never do this. Yeah. So we need that extra material in the back. So the back shoulder seam actually needs to be longer than the front shoulder seam. Okay? So it needs to be a 1/4 inch longer. So what you do is you take your shoulder length, you add a 1/4 inch, 5 3/4, and again you do the same thing, and you see where it intersects line UV. Now, for some people, this may not happen. Okay? It may actually be point U. If you measured your shoulders long, or if you're doing a more modern shoulder length, it will actually intersect line ST. As the modern shoulder lengths are 1 inch longer than period shoulder lengths. Period shoulders, we end right at the point of the bone, right here. Okay, that's to allow for movement. Okay. Modern shoulders are basically where our epaulets are on our doublets. You're 1 inch out. If you look at a suit jacket, where's the shoulder in? About here. That's why we have shoulder pads in suit jackets. Yeah, they're a little bit farther out. And you notice, you really can't lift your arm up in a suit jacket without making the whole suit jacket right up. Right. Yeah, it's the same thing. So if we want to be able to lift our arm over our head, we need to end the shoulder right there. Going for a more modern look, we'll push it off. I mean, even this T-shirt has a modern shoulder to it. It's so that's why in period patterns you need line UV to get that. And if you measure your shoulders a little bit long, and a lot of times it'll be either really close to point U or actually on it. Yours is like right next to it, so we're close enough. The other thing is, if you look at modern patterns, there's always a pleat of material right here. Because while we need that extra material down here in our shoulder to allow us movement and to be able to roll our shoulders, we don't need it right up here. Yeah, well, pleats aren't period. Okay, so we need to take out a little excess material. Okay? And that's why there's a little dip, in the back shoulder seam. It actually curves ever so slightly. Okay? If you look at the front of the Spanish Tailor's Handbook, you look at his seam, the shoulder seam actually curves a little bit. And it's not an artist, rendition. It's what actually was happening in the sleeve, or in the shoulder. So we want this line to curve. So we need to find the center point between between point X, which, like I said, can be point U. They can be the same point. It's wherever, point X is wherever the shoulder seam intersects line UV. Okay? In this case, yours is exactly the same. Okay? We need to find that halfway point between the two. So since we're dealing with 5 3/4 of an inch, I'm looking at basically 2 7/8 inches. Okay? We move down from the line, essentially 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch from the line, or half a finger, as I think I put in my half a finger. Yeah, which is essentially 1/4 inch. Okay, so we find our halfway point. Oh, you drew a really lousy line there. Not even a straight line, Steve. You gotta get better at drawing straight lines. All right, so we have our our measurement. Find our halfway point. Okay, which is so the halfway point would be point Y. That's the halfway point of the shoulder, and point Z is the you just square down from it that 1/4 of an inch, or that half a finger. Okay, so right about there. Okay, you then just connect the dots. Okay, and that's going to give you like a really shallow triangle. Okay, so you go ahead and do it. And when you cut your pattern, it's going to end up curving a little bit. So I mean, it doesn't matter if you draw it as a straight line. You can draw it as a really shallow curve, but you can see it already looks like a curve, so no point in it. All right, you see how we did that? You see why we did that?
Yes.
Yeah. All of this is to allow for movement. Elizabethan patterns are especially important with movement. Okay. Now we're going to construct the arm's eye, otherwise known as the armhole. We call it the arm's eye because armhole sounds weird. Yeah, arm's eye sounds really cool. And points, little a, b, and c. All they really are guide points in which to draw our curves. Okay, it's not important that you be super precise with where you place them. Okay, these are general indications and everything else like that. Okay. So what we want to do is start with point little a. Okay. Okay. So little a is you find it. First of all, you want to find the distance that's 1/3 of the distance up from H. Okay. So 1/3 of the distance from S to H measured up from point H. Okay. So basically, you look at this and you go, oh, that's about half. Oh, that would be about 1/3. And that way you can make. And what you want to do is you actually want to mark point little a, one finger over, and about 1/3 of the distance up. Okay, you see how I did that? All right. So now you can find point little b by doing the same thing over here. But instead of 1/3 of the way up, it's half the way up between N and where your X is. Okay? So, yeah. And again, just trying to mark a little bit of a line. Okay? You see that? And point little c is You can say 1/4 of the distance between Q and H. Or you can just mark a really fat finger right there, and that's usually good. Yeah. So you want generally about 1/4 of the distance. Yeah, and if you say, oh, that's about half, yeah, that's about 1/4. Okay? Okay, these are just generalities, you know. This is just to give you a way to draw that curve of the armhole. Okay? The easiest way I have found to do this is to first connect point X, which in your case is also point U. They ended up being the same point, to point B with a straight line. Do that first. And do the same thing on the other side, wherever point W is to point A. Give me a nice straight line. So point W is where it's hitting. Yeah, I know. You didn't label that one. It's not my fault. You want to label it now. All right, then you got to use your handy dandy elbow compass here again. Okay? Got to get a little bit artistic about this curve. We want to make a nice curve here from point Q to point B. You draw about 1,000 lines, and then you're going to kind of feed it up into this straight line. So that straight line there, that's not necessarily your line for the curve of your armhole. It just kind of gives us a nice guide. See how I did that? Okay. So, and again, this is obviously the curve that goes from here to here. And the curve of the front, basically the same thing. We're only going to go to point C there. And again, we're just going to use our wrist and think. Oh, you can see that's way too sharp there. We want to make this a nice, gentle curve all the way around. So on the chest side, it will curve in quite a bit more. Okay? You know, and again, that line's kind of just your guide. And there you go. You get a nice arm side. The more often you do this, the easier it will get. But again, this is not an exact thing, and this will change from pattern to pattern. I've never done two arm's eyes exactly the same. You can use your curved ruler in this case. Okay? You know, your 12-inch curved ruler, you can see that's generally the curve right there. Yes, it's disgusting. I've done this a lot. And if you do the other side, you can see I get about the same on the other side. Okay, so, yeah, so you can use your curved ruler and just, you know, sit there and just kind of, you know, draw it around, and then, you know, just take this and draw it around that way. But if you do it enough times, you know, yes, I'm sorry, I've done this way too many times. Okay. Now we're going to start drawing our pattern. Yay! We're going to start drawing our pattern. All right, so we really don't need our measurement sheet anymore, which is nice. Well, actually, we will need it. We will need it. Never mind. I lied. All right, so we're going to start with the back piece. The nice thing about the back piece, as you can see, it's mostly drawn for us, okay? Couple minor things we need to adjust, but for the most part, we're going to follow that back shoulder seam. We're going to follow this back neck seam, okay? If you want to do the Spanish doublet pattern where the collar actually rises up, and you got to make the back collar piece, you just got to kind of draw it right there, you know, and you'll see it in a later slide what I mean, okay? But yeah, or we can do it right now on yours. Yeah, because is that what you want, or
yes, please.
All right, we'll do that on yours then. Yeah, and so yeah, so first point though we need is point D. Now point D depends on the sex of the person you're going to be making your doublet for. All right, and again, it has to do with the physics of the fabric and all this other kind of cool stuff. All right, so first of all, we need to get your waist measurement. What is your waist measurement? All right, so we had 38 inches is your waist measurement. Now, what did you use as ease when you first did your doublet?
What you told us to use as ease.
3 fingers, right?
Yes.
All right. 3 fingers is equivalent, basically equivalent to 2 inches, okay? Which for full ease would be 4 inches, right? Because we're only using half of it here, okay? So it basically works like this, okay? And I need a marker. When we first did our chest measurement plus ease, okay, take our full chest. My chest happens to be at 42, okay? Ease for a standard doublet would be 4 inches for a total of 46 inches, half of which would be 23 inches, and that would be my measurement from A to D, okay? To make life easier, I can just take half of my chest measurement, which is 21, add 3 fingers, which is essentially 2 inches, and I get a 4-inch ease. You see how that works?
Yes.
Okay, do you understand where that comes from?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the chest doesn't compress as much as the waist, because we have these things called ribs. Okay? So for whatever ease we used for the chest, we got to use half that ease in our waist. Okay? So if we have a 42-inch chest plus 4 inches of ease for our total chest measurement, for our total waist measurement, we would have our 38-inch waist plus 2 inches of ease.
Okay.
Okay? That's the total waist measurement plus ease. This is important, okay? So that's why you know, now like I said, we use 3 fingers, but you can essentially think of 3 fingers as 2 inches.
Right.
You know, so, yeah. So I mean, so we have our waist, which would be for you, our full waist measurement plus ease.
Right.
Now, half of that is what we want to use for our pattern, because our pattern only covers half our body. So that would be 20 inches. Now here comes the fun part of point D. Okay? For men, point D is about 1/3 of that half of our waist measurement plus ease. Which in your case is between 6 and 7 inches. Okay, because that's about 1/3. Right. For women, it's 1/4 of that half. Okay? Which in your case, if you were a woman, would be 5 inches. Okay? The reason being is that we want women to appear to have very narrow waist. And what this does with a doublet, which I have a doublet over here, is you can see on the back of the doublet how that narrows in. Now this is a men's doublet, and you can see it narrows a little bit, but not significantly. Okay? With a woman's doublet, this angle would be much sharper, and therefore give her the illusion of a narrower waist. The other thing this does is it allows us to have good, strong fabric where we need it, and to have give where we need it. Okay? If I put this seam directly down the middle of the side, right here, okay? Seams are weak points because that's where we're connecting the woven fibers of the fabric, right? So this would put our weak point right where it's going to get the most stress, right here. Plus, that would mean that this seam would be on the vertical grains, vertical line of the fabric, meaning there's not a lot of stretch there. The stretch is on the bias. By angling this seam, we're putting it on the bias and giving it a little give, and that way when we rotate, we get a little give right there, and we have strength right here on the side because that's still a solid piece of fabric. Understand?
Yes.
It's going to pull more here than it will here. Okay?
So
And then,
away.
so that's why the back waist is narrower than the front waist. Okay? And that's why we want this line to be only about 1/3. Now, when I say about 1/3, That's just to make math easy. Because if we did exactly 1/3 of 20, it'd be 6 2/3 or something like that. Yeah, 6 and 2. Yeah, that'd be it. 6 and 2/3. Do you really want to measure out 6 and 2/3 of an inch? Nah, 7's easier, isn't it? Yeah. You can pick 6 or 7 or 6.5 if you want to go halfway in between. But yeah, somewhere in there, you want to use one of those numbers, okay? And you're going to measure over from B that distance to find your point D, okay? So however much you use, though, you have to remember how much you used, okay? So how much are you using?
6.5.
That's 6.5? Because you see, this ruler works from the end. Okay, you cut off 1/8 of an inch there. Okay, so that's 6.5. Not what you measured was 6 3/8. And yeah, it's not that big of a difference, but it is a difference.
Where's the end point?
The end of the ruler is the end of the.
I've done that on every measurement.
Have you really? Well, you're gonna be short in some places.
I'm gonna lose some weight.
Yeah, you'll be fine. That's 1/8 of an inch. It's not that big of a deal. Okay. Now we want to find where point little e is. Okay. Point little e is on the curve of our armhole here, and where we want that seam to connect up in. Of course, according to our slide, to find point E, well, about 1.5 fingers above the chest line. So again, we use that little headline, and we find the point on the curve about 1.5 fingers up. Okay? Again, this point is, malleable. It doesn't have to be in that exact space. If you want a little bit more angle, because you want to maybe make sure there's a little bit more give in your seam, move it over more towards the center. If you do want a slightly straighter seam, you can move it up the armhole. But basically, you want it somewhere on that curve where it goes in. Where we get it now is pretty good. Okay? Now connect the dots. Now, your waist, okay, your back slopes, has that curve in the back, right at the natural waist. Okay, it's where it starts to curve in. And so what we want to do is we actually want the back waist to end right before it starts that curve. And it's just after your natural waist. So we want to lift the back waist length up just a hair. Okay? So point F is literally just a finger, a fat finger, or a finger above point B. So, okay. So now we want to draw this little curve. But the first thing we want to remember is when we connect our pattern, we would like the waist to be basically a straight line right there at that side seam. Okay? Well, to make a straight line, you essentially need 2 equal angles, or, angles that equal up to 180 degrees. Right? Now, we could figure out what this angle here is, make the other angle on the front piece, be the complementary angle and everything else like that. Or we can just make it 90 degrees and make sure the other one's 90 degrees and it'll be easier. Okay? So the first thing you want to do is you want to draw a 90-degree angle from this back side seam. You see that? Okay? And that makes sure that this angle right there is 90 degrees. Okay? And then you can, draw a line over from here. Again, you want to kind of square it over. Okay? And then you just kind of connect those with a curve. Be creative. Okay? And that's basically going to be your nice little curve at the bottom. Okay? But again, I want our armhole to be nice and flat too. So if we make this angle up here 90 degrees, okay, and then again we kind of just work that into our curve, that's going to ensure that our armhole also fits nice and flat. We're not going to have little extra pieces of material coming up in the corner. It'll make matching the seams up so much easier.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's our back piece. And we got through the front piece at the last one, so that's what we're going to get. can see near the top, we follow the slope of the chest, the curve, and the shoulder. We follow most of the curve of this armhole up to point little c. But then things change drastically. We also drop the front point, okay? And again, this matters because of style more than anything else, all right? And the fact is that we slope in towards our groin. And yes, it basically cleavage is saying, ladies, look here. Because we would be wearing a codpiece sometimes. And again, this is that whole, want to be affluent, and Elizabethans they're very strange people. So this what this point is for. It's not only fashion; it's to draw the eye and everything else like that. So first thing we need to do is we need to find that point, which would be point G, little g. Okay. Again, this varies with style, but a good general guide is the length of your shoulder. So whatever the length of your shoulder is, drop point G below point F, that length. So your shoulder was 5.5, so we do that. That's the first thing you do. Now, it's not directly below F though, okay? Because we want it to slope in. So wherever we want it to slope in from, how great we want that slope depends on the person and everything else like that and the style. But 2 to 3 fingers of width, in other words, and 1.5 to 2 inches is a good guide. So or if you've got one of these lovely little 2-inch rulers, it works out perfectly. In that you just mark your shoulder length at 1.5 feet, at 5.5 inches, and then you kind of just draw that little corner, and you get your point. See how nice that is? It works out pretty good. Now, we need a guideline for our waistline now, and you want to connect the dots between F and G. Okay? Big F and little g. Alright, so we need a guideline. Use your yardstick, connect point little g to point little f. So that's this way back here, yep, gotta line it up. Try to draw a straight line this time, Steve.
Not even close.
Well, at least that's only a guideline. All right. Now here comes the part. Now you use 6.5 for your point D, right?
Right.
All right. So we had 20 inches as what is equal to half our waist plus the ease we use for our waist. Okay? We subtract 6.5 inches from that. What do we get?
13.5.
Very good. You're good at math. There we go. Okay? That's what's left over of our waist. So that's what we need to put in the front waist. Okay? This is the back waist length. That would be the front waist length. We need whatever's left over. If you had used 7, we'd be using 13. If you had used 6, we'd be using 14. You see how that works?
Yeah.
So whatever you have left, that's where we need to mark. Now, that's going to be point I. Okay? It's measured from G along that guideline you just did. Now, point I, again, is just a guide point. It's not, necessarily a point that's going to be used, but it's a guide point. Okay? So, that's going to be the rest of our waist. Right? So we know we're going to be able to work on it. Now, if we measure point little d to little e, that's how long our side seam is, right? And to make life easier, we want to make sure the back side seam is exactly the same length as the front side seam. So your back side seam, well, it is 7 7/8 inches. So you can write that down just to make sure you don't forget it. Okay? All right? Now, so just remember that. Now we need to mark point H. Point H is directly below point E. Okay? on the chest line. So if you go directly below and just mark on the chest line where point little h, yep. Now, we need a line that's 7 7/8 inches long, okay? That drops down from point H, okay, and basically runs through, or that lines up with point I, okay? So what you want to do is draw a guideline, first of all, between H and little I, little h and little I, okay? Just draw a guideline. Now, measure down from H on that guideline the length of your back, side seam, which was 7 7/8, right?
From point H.
From point H, yep.
Yeah, 8 inches.
That's where it is right there. It's 7 7/8. Yeah. So all you have to do is just mark on that seam where it hits. Now, sometimes this will hit above I. Sometimes it'll hit below I. Sometimes it will hit I. So I mean, you can't. That's why I is just a guide point. It gives us our angle. That's all it's doing is it's giving us our angle. Sometimes, depending on the person, if their waist is bigger than their chest, which we had several people in the class that's part of it, that means this line is actually going to run here. Yeah. Because, their waist was bigger than their chest. This line is for the chest. This line is for the waist. That means point I would be somewhere back here. And we'd have to fix that as we go along. So, it just depends on the person, okay? Where this is going to hit and how it's going to hit, all right? So on you, yours is a little bit above little I, so we get a little J right there. But, and we'll see. Now, what you want to do is you want to connect little j to little g with a slight curve. But remember, we want nice 90-degree angles, so draw a 90-degree angle out from that first, which sometimes the guideline is a 90-degree angle. And that'll help start you on your way to your curve.
Oh, should I connect it?
No, connect them.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So, and again, this is just, don't do 90 degrees from that yet. Right now, just kind of make a slight curve there. While I move on to the next slide. Oh yeah, this is the fun one. Now, we're going to need to adjust this front side seam. Again, we're looking for extra fabric where we need it to provide proper motion and proper fit. Now, this side seam varies for men and for women. It's done one way for men and one way for women. Because men have guts and women have chests. Okay? And so we need to, and women also have a waist, okay? And so what it is, guys, when they move from their core more than anything else, okay? Women, it's usually a little higher up, okay? And again, their waist is usually more slender, and so we need a different curve, okay? For guys, we're going to take this back side, this front side seam, and you see we're going to curve it out just a hair. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do that here in a second. For women, just to show you, you can see on the top part, we curve it out, and on the bottom part, we curve it in. This is to compensate for usually a narrower waist, okay, and and a little bit less ribs, okay, and the way the muscles are shaped and everything else like that. And this is to compensate usually for the chest a little bit. So, I mean, that's what we're dealing with here, is where muscles lay and everything else like that, and the difference between, male anatomy versus female anatomy. They're very similar in some ways, but in some ways we need to make compensations for movement and everything else like that. So you see, you understand why we have to do this seam this way.
Yeah.
Okay? And yes, that's going to make this seam slightly longer than the back one. When we put our pattern together, that's what we ease seams together point. All right, so the first thing we need to do is to find the halfway point between H and J if we're doing this for a man. All right, so halfway between H and little j. Now,
Like the same person.
yeah, measure like a same person, yeah, from the end to the real end. So, I mean, since yours is really close to 8, that's going to be really close to 4. Okay, it's going to be just slightly less than 4. Okay, and we need to go out from HJ one small finger. So that's your little pinky finger out away from the seam because we want to curve that out. Okay, just mark that as a point. Now again, what we're going to basically do is connect the dots. And that's going to give us essentially a curve when we cut out our fabric. Okay? You're not going to be able to cut in straight lines. And it's easier to draw straight lines than it is to try and draw a really shallow curve at this point. Okay? Now, if you feel like you have a very generous gut, you can make this curve a little bit bigger. If the person's a very slender person, you can make it a little smaller. It just depends on the person. But for us, that's what we're looking at. Then we get to the whole point of squaring off again, to make sure our seams match up. So again, we want that 90-degree angle. Okay, and that's where that 90-degree angle is because we want it to this line here. And again, all we're going to really do is meld that into a curve that we already have. See how that worked? And then here, for guys, and that's going to go up a little bit. Okay? What that means is you got to take this curve on your back and you want it to rise before it falls back down. Okay? So basically it's a very shallow S. Okay, you see how that it comes out and then goes up and then back down.
Okay.
That's because you have this thing called a hip bone, and we want to go around it. Okay, that's all this rise in the back is for, is to compensate for the hip bone. Now, just to show you, if this was a woman's pattern, okay, and we have our front side seam, let's kind of see. I'm just kind of sketching this out here. There we go. Not the greatest pattern in the world, but it's close, okay? What we do is we start with that point K again. And let me get the slide up so you can see it. All right. About a third of the way down, okay, is where we want to mark that point K. Okay? That gives us our general guide point. Now, halfway between little h and little k, we need to take that, and again, we want to mark that out, that little finger away from the edge. You see how I did that? And then halfway between little k and little j, we want to go the other direction, again, about halfway in. And then again, if I go straight line to straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line, oh look, you get a nice little S-curve. Okay? You see how that works?
Yeah, would you just do this on doublets, or would you do this at...
I do this on bodices for women, any garment for a woman where it's a fitted top of, the outfit. So corsets, bodices, doublets for women, jerkins, anything that's a fitted top. Now, if it's like, even, not really with kirtles. I don't do it really with kirtles because kirtles have a different seam to them. Of course, jackets are loose enough you don't have to really worry about this. But with like a doublet-like pattern or a bodice-like pattern, that's how I would do this, or why I would do this. Because again, it allows for that little bit of extra motion. All right, you are now caught up with everybody else.
Cool. Collar.